Hey everyone, I'm Tsaki from Flycode, and I'm really excited today to host Galit. Galit is the VP payment of Fraudsters. He's coming from a fraud and payment background for the last few years. Hey Galit, great to have you.
Hi, Tashi. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks a lot for joining. Let's start a bit about your background. So you've been in payment and fraud for years. How did you start in this specific industry?
Oh, it's a great question. I always love to talk to payment people and fraud people to ask them because we always say like nobody went to the university and learned payment, which is why people always come with a lot of different backgrounds. For me, it was many years ago. I was lucky enough to get a job of a fraud manager for a gambling operation without any experience because nobody really had that much experience back in the days. But it was a very, very good school for me to understand online payment and online fraud. So I managed fraud there. Then I managed fraud on the processor side. And then I started to manage payment on the merchant side again. And I actually found that optimizing payment is very much related to fraud, because even if you understand who is fraud and who is not fraud, and the good people are trying to pay, many times they have a bad experience and they see the 3 days window and the bank declines them by mistake. And when you try to understand why auth rate is not 100% or maybe at least like 98 or something nice, you realize that everybody is scared of the same thing. Everybody is scared of fraud at the end of the day. So the issuers are scared of fraud and the PSPs are scared of fraud, and everybody is responsible to stop the fraud. And it kind of hit me that if we don't find a way as an industry to really come together and share what we know and share the knowledge and understand the fact that I know that you're not fraud, you're just buying a lot of pair of shoes right now from some reason, but your credit card company sure doesn't know that, and they're declining your transaction. And I started to think about like, what do we need to do to really make that process work better, and how can we fix this ecosystem? It's okay, but there is a lot of room for improvement. And about 5 years ago, I joined Fraudsters. Fraudsters started as a fraud prevention company. It was the first company to bring machine learning and real-time decisioning to the fraud world. So take the fraud world from fraud rules, which is how I did fraud 15 years ago, really into real-time decisioning. And for me, it was very interesting to see how we can take this real-time decisioning also to the payment world. And with a lot of buzz about AI today, but 5-6 years ago, it wasn't that much in use. And the other thing that was interesting for me is how can we impact issuers? How can we tell these issuers they don't have to worry? It's just buying like 5 flying tickets right now. It is expensive, but it's fine.
What I did yesterday, not 5, but
Yeah.
So I think we'll speak more about the ecosystem in the industry, but let's kind of dive in directly. You speak about the AI buzz, and today it seems like AI is making it really easy for fraudsters to kind of manipulate in the system and operate. How do you see it from the customer and in Fraudsters? Like, how is AI, and everyone is kind of trying to scare us with deep fake and AI. How do you see it kind of evolve today?
So it's really interesting. I think as AI is becoming more, like the technology is becoming very accessible to everybody. And I have 3 teenagers at home. They are doing their homework with ChatGPT, and the teachers can't really do much about it. And like, why would they really sit there and write it by themselves? Like, they know it at 15 already. And fraudsters also know it. So today it's very, very easy for fraudsters to use the technology to pretend they are someone else, to hide really, really well behind someone else's identity. And it's also very easy to understand what they need to do to be let in a website. If more than 15 years ago, I could have a rule, if the IP does not match the PIN, does not match the address or something, probably this is a fraudster. Right now, even if you put much more complicated rules, it's very easy for fraudsters to understand how to go around your rules and come in. And we are seeing it. We are seeing it in the checkout flow. We are seeing flows of like account takeover. We are seeing flows of anything around return abuse, and people are just returning stones instead of what they said they are going to return. And like, the whole ecosystem of e-commerce that is evolved and everybody wants to give good service. So they want to give you the money fast when you ask for a refund and so on. Just becomes like a lot of different, I would say, places for the fraudsters to come in and take advantage of you. And they will take advantage anywhere that you left, not even the door, you left the window open a bit, they will come in and they will find a way to do it. So I think this is what merchant needs to keep in mind basically today.
Let's try to dive deeper. What does it actually mean today for Fraudsters? Is it really changing the core of your product technology and the models? Like what specifically you are doing? Like what specifically customers are trying to do now? Where we are in this stage of trying to fight this kind of deep fake and AI fraud?
So as I mentioned earlier, Fraudsters has been around for 11 years. So Fraudsters started from real-time decisioning and started because of the understanding that trying to stop fraud by rules is not great. It's not stopping everybody. It's stopping a lot of good people that are just behaving maybe in a strange way. So kind of like the core remained and the core of understanding who is the real identity. So maybe it's Tzachi trying to say he's Galit, but like to really understand that this is Tzachi, it's not Galit, even though he's saying he's Galit, he's trying to dress like Galit, is like doing everything like Galit, but it's not really Galit. So the core of like understanding identity really remains. But I think today it's more about how do you use this fact that you understand identity throughout the whole journey. So it's not anymore just about the checkout flow and the payment. It's about registration of an account, login to an account, everything post-purchase, like return abuse, using coupons, referral abuse, like a lot of things that are happening around. Like fraudsters are not anymore this person that stole a credit card and trying to use it. And they can do a lot of other bad things. So how do you understand how do you understand bad actors versus good actors? And then what do you do for the good actors so they will have a good customer service? So if I got a lot of things from Shein because I said I had 3 teenagers, but they didn't like some of it and we return it. And I want to see the money today. I want to make sure Shein is giving me back the money. But if they don't know that I'm a valid person, they will not give me the money until they get the package, they open it, they see that I actually returned what I said I am returning. So you really need to understand identity to give good customer service. And that goes also for the payment flow. How do you not do a 3DS challenge? How you are like making the payment flow like a one click, very easy. So today it's more about leveraging that, the fact you know identities to really provide that better experience to your better people.
Can you share a bit what customers are telling you about this AI, the challenges in the adoption, maybe some real examples, like how customers are viewing it? Are they trying to build internally? Are they looking for solution? Are they asking themselves what are really the challenges that we are trying to solve? How they're trying to go about it today?
So I think AI is still like kind of like this path. So everybody's also trying to see how they can leverage AI within their organization across like a lot of different things. Like all the companies are kind of now adapting AI in some stage of adapting AI. And I think right now it's kind of the stage that sometimes merchants believe that, okay, like we are adapting AI, we have this team and it seems like, we can solve it because we have AI. But AI is not something that, okay, you have it so you can use it. You still need to have the right systems in place, the right technology, the right understanding to use it. Like it's still a technology that you need to use. So buying a technology or using a technology is not actually solving for the pain. And I talked to one merchant recently that said, yeah, we use AI for real-time decisions about how to route the transactions. And we worked on it for like a few months. We had a whole team dedicated to it. We went live and it was crap, so we are not using it anymore. Yeah, and it's not so easy. Like AI is not solving the problem for you. It's another technology that you need to understand how to use. And I think a lot of the companies out there and the vendors are actually, in my view, a good opportunity for merchants to actually leverage what's out there to not build everything in-house. Some things that make sense to build in-house. It's also obviously depends on the size of the company, on the budget that they have. But there are a lot of companies out there that are doing a lot of different things, a lot of different optimization, a lot of like solving a lot of different problems, solving decline, solving fraud, solving like insufficient fund problems. So I think actually I'm seeing more merchants that are now looking to outsource things that they, like companies that for years believe that they need to build everything in-house, are actually coming to the understanding that it's not about building everything in-house. Like they have so much things to focus on in their business that if they can outsource some of these things, they shouldn't be developing it in-house, and they can shift. Like, let's say if we think before merchants were doing fraud manually with rules, I had a department of like 15 people that were reviewing the rules. Once you automate it, you don't necessarily have to send 15 people home, but you can do something so much more useful with these 15 people that will actually gain you revenue. So like when you look at it like this, like I have 15 people, do I really want them to sit there and like manually review all these things, or I can actually use them for something else?
What is driving the change in the customers and their ability, like in their motivation to build internally versus to take like external technologies? Like, because I think some of the trends in AI that we are hearing is like in the enterprise level that they are trying to do the innovation internally or trying to rewrite their own kind of the internal record or the system of record internally. So what do you think driving this in payment specifically or in fraud specifically?
So I think maybe probably two things. One is that there is a lot of innovation out there. And when they are sometimes seeing things that are out there, they really understand that it's going to be very hard to build it. And it's going to take, maybe even if they believe they can do it, how many people do you need? How many years until you get experience and you try and you fail and you try again? And like innovation takes a lot of time. So I think they see the level of innovation that is out there. This is one. And the other one, I think that everybody is looking at cost today. So if I used to talk to merchant a few years ago and they would say, they would only talk about auth rate. How do I maximize conversion? Only auth rate. So many companies today say, I need to cut costs. Payment processing is like super, super expensive. Of course, conversion is critical. Like nobody will tell you, I don't care about conversion, give it to me cheap. But cost becomes a very, very big concern with the economic today. And a lot of times merchant telling me, we were planning to build it in-house, but right now our budget was cut. So we're not going to build it in 2025. We want to see if there is something we can leverage instead, because they already had, let's say, all this plan to build this smart routing model, and they integrated to multiple processor, and they had this whole idea of like something to be done. And now when the budget is cut, they can't really, they know where they want to get. They understand they want to get to it with the current budget that they have. And now they're like open to say, okay, let's see if someone can help me with it. And maybe probably the last thing is that they are sometimes trying, as I mentioned before, and we see it with the fraud. With fraud, sometimes they would come after a big failure, after they realize that, yeah, normally what they do is great. It's okay, maybe not great, but when there is this sophisticated fraud rings, something happens, they didn't catch it. And that can cost millions of dollars. That can even cost you your processing account in some cases. And they can't take the risk that once again, they will fail to detect something, and they understand, okay, maybe we need like to get to the next level.
So the trigger was like a disaster or like a business risk in fraud or like a huge loss. And then they kind of, this is the trigger to come to either search for a solution. And God, it's really interesting. Okay. Let's speak a bit more about the industry or payment. For a lot of people that are not coming from fintech or payment, it's not always clear like the complexity or the evolution, I would say, of fintech and payment in general. Maybe kind of a bit more how you see the industry today, why the complexity is increasing over time.
So I used to think payment is really complicated, but I think it's so much more complicated than when I thought it was complicated, like in the beginning of my journey. So like when I managed payment, I had multiple processors, and I said, okay, I had all like, I remember I designed all this like logic and reroute and like internal tool that I could like play around and A/B test. And like I had a team At some point, they really hated me because all day long, they just had to do A/B test and analyze results and like see what to do and by bin and country and all of that. But it was only about payment processors. So if you have 3, and a lot of time you can process and then like do at least one retry, and one of them is very cheap, maybe you start from the cheaper one, you do a retry with a more expensive one. It's manageable. Like, it's not great, as I said, but it's manageable. And then a lot of things happen. So 4 years ago, PSD2 entered our life, and it wasn't about processors anymore at all, like only. It was also about 3DS or exemptions. The difference between them became huge because maybe they are telling you they can do exemption up to 500 euro, but in reality, nothing above 200 is really being authorized. So now you have to see, okay, but maybe another processor, the auth rate is so much better with exemptions. Maybe they're telling you they will do exemptions, but they actually send a lot of your traffic to 3DS. It's very hard for merchants to really understand what's happening like on the other side, on the PSP side. So this is just PSD2 regulation. Japan is coming in 2 months, exactly. We used to call it the PSD2 for Japan, but it has nothing to do for PSD2, but it is a regulation about using 3DS, and some more countries are being regulated. So like that's the regulation. So now you're a merchant and you need to understand what's the regulation in Japan, what's the regulation in Europe, what are you allowed to do? Can you do 3DS? Can you avoid 3DS? Like, what do you need to do? And then became network token. So network token is cheaper to process with, but not all issuers support it. Auth rate should be better, but sometimes it's really worse. I've seen it, like it's really bad. Merchant doing network token, not retrying, again, with a full pan if it's not working, are losing tons of money. But you still want to use it. It's a good tool, right? And then you have the debit rails in the US. It's really cheap. It's accessible now much more than in the past.
And faster.
Faster. Sometimes the auth rate is not as great, although it's cheaper. Network token is not really working properly with debit rails. BDS, not really working properly with debit rails. So like, how do you even start to make a decision? You have one transaction, 4 decision points at a minimum. If it's not working, you need to decide if to try again. You're not going to try again 6 times. How can you even do that with the way I used to manage payment of like A/B testing and rules?
Summarize for a second, what are the 4 decision points?
So you process the transaction, you have to decide if to do 3DS or not, or to ask for exemption if there is a regulation. So that's one. Second one is you want to decide if to use a network token or to use a full card number. If it's in the US, you would like to decide if to use the debit rails or the credit rails, the Visa, MasterCard rails. That's the third one. And then the last one would be if you have multiple processor, which PSP are using to process your transaction. So it's 4 decision points. And now if the transaction is declined, your first decision is, do I even want to try again? What was the reason for the decline? What do I want to do? And now you have obviously the PSPs and the issuers, and they don't really like that you try again and again and again. So you can't just do, how you call it in the recurring business, a woodchucker. Like, you can't do that. Like, that's not
like
a good thing to do.
Approach, trying to,
So it's a lot of decisions to make, and it's really complicated, and you need a really good optimization system because it impacts the auth rate and the cost, which is like the 2 most important things for any business that wants to, obviously, let's say, make more money at the end of the day. You want to go like have a better conversion, lower cost, and a better customer experience as well. So good luck to anyone trying to open 3DS window for my mom. She's never coming back again. Not because she's fraud, just because she just celebrated 71. And she's really good buying online. But by the time she finds her phone, understand there is an SMS, find the code, like not accessible technology for some of the population.
Yeah, for most of us. I think, like from my experience, merchant often they don't really understand. Maybe the top ones, like the top enterprise one with a lot of experience will, but the majority of them, they don't really understand why it doesn't work, to kind of try to brute force or try to kind of abuse a bit the system. They don't fully understand what will be the consequences for them. What will be the consequences for them over time from your experience?
So depend on what they are trying to do. I was speaking to a merchant yesterday that, for example, thought that when the transaction is declined for fraud, it's really great. They can send it to 3DS because anyway, the liability will shift to the bank. So that's another way to try to process the transaction, which is pure fraud. And because they don't have to take responsibility, the bank will take it. How great. And they got into the monitoring programs and they got very high fines and they realized that was a very, very bad idea. The ecosystem at the end will punish you. So what I want to say is the ecosystem at the end will punish you when you don't behave. How fast? What's the punishment? That depends. When you try to process transaction many, many times, again and again and again, like a lot of retries, your auth rate will go down because it's starting to look like a very crappy need. Your auth rate will go down and it is very expensive at the end of the day. I mean, even if you're just paying whatever, 1 cent, like all these things you're trying again and again and again for big merchants or even for smaller ones, it's really expensive. So I would say between the cost, the fact the auth rate will go down, and the fact that your even PSP can come and say, hey, what are you doing? Like the auth rate in your account is like 5%. Like you're definitely doing something really bad. We don't want to be your processor anymore. We are like, go do this behavior somewhere else. Nobody will like you. The issuers will not like you for sure. The pure PSP will not like you. And so it's not about anymore about just putting some mechanism in place and trying to hack the system. It's about being smart about what you do. And yes, I think retry is super important. For example, if you process with network token and you don't retry without network token when it's not working, you're losing money. But if you do 3 exemption and the issuer wants a 3DS and you don't try again with 3DS, it's bad. So like you need to have all these you need to have all the tools. Like there are so many tools. You need to have all the tools in place, but you need to have a smart logic to operate these tools today.
Yeah. I think when we are looking at this industry and we are specifically looking at the smart logic, it's really interesting to kind of understand even how to look at the problem, where to start. So I think it's really something that probably we definitely see it on the, on the interchange between the kind of the payment expertise, the data tools, the models, and really trying to understand how to fit and kind of how it makes sense for each of the merchant and each of the customers. So definitely a challenge there. Let's speak a bit about the industry. Like we mentioned in the beginning of this conversation, a bit more about the ecosystem, the issuer and the payment provider, the merchants, and eventually kind of how the data flows. How do you see it today? What is the real opportunity? What's your vision around how this industry will kind of behave and try to optimize payment together?
So I think probably the number one trend that I love, I think it's not enough like out there yet, but is data sharing. And merchants have a lot of data. So when you spend a lot of money at 2 a.m. to buy flying ticket, the merchant you're buying from, they know exactly what you're doing. They know you're buying 5 tickets for you and the family from here to there in 5 months when you're on vacation. That makes a lot of sense to them. They're not scared of you. They think you're valid. When your issuer see that transaction at 2 a.m. and on a website you never bought before, you are normally sleeping, there is 0 transaction in your credit card normally at 2 a.m. And now they are just thinking someone stole your card. And what if you would, like if the merchant where you bought the tickets from would be able to tell your issuer, everything is okay. Like it's fine. We got all the details that we need. We believe it's not fraud. Or even more better than that, if there is a fraud vendor that is saying, we know this person, we know Tzachi is buying always online, we know him, we understand what he's doing. Hey, issuer, don't worry about it. It's okay. And on the way, also give the issuer some data that can help them. This is the IP, this is the address, this is what he's doing. So they can use that data in their model to gain more confidence. And then they approve more. And I think a few years ago, when I used to talk to merchants about data sharing, they would go immediate like, data sharing? No, I'm not sharing my data. Like, I'm not giving it to anyone. like go away. And I remember one merchant, I even said like, but what about the IP? Just IP. Like, no, I don't want people buying burgers and then their IP is going like to the ban. No way. Like, I don't want that. And we hardly hear that anymore. When you explain merchant that if they share the data and they can choose what to share, they don't have to share sensitive data about their consumers, but fraud score is not a sensitive data point, for example. So they share the data, they get more auth rate, less false declines by the bank, and the bank loves it. And also the banks, by the way, the banks used to say, we don't need this data, like we are fine. And now they realize there is so much more data out there that they don't have. So I think everybody wants to share data today, and we are seeing the biggest issuers, especially in the US, thinking or starting, depends on their stage of like building a way to consume data from issuers, from merchants and fraud vendors, and to enhance their decisions. So I would say data sharing is like the first trend. The second one is AI. As we said, everything is starting to use AI, obviously not just in the payment world, but we will see more and more AI. We are seeing the biggest payment processors are starting to have more smarter decisions, starting to leverage AI, having like full departments that are dealing with optimization with AI. Merchants are starting to use it. Other vendors, like the fraud vendors, optimization vendors. So I think AI definitely will change the way we work and will change the way we operate, but also will change, like, we're going to be able to be so much more sophisticated and like so much better at what we do and so much more accurate, both in the ability to detect fraud and in the ability to provide good customer experience to the legit customers.
When you're looking at this kind of enhancement or this kind of opportunity of payment and AI, what are the areas, like we spoke about a lot about fraud and optimization, what will be the kind of, if you're trying to take an exercise with me about the really vision, kind of where it will be, like what we are not imagining, but you think might be possible in AI and payment, what are those areas will be? I can tell you for myself, like I'm thinking about the buying experience, like AI will buy for me. AI will know to manage my cards. Maybe it will know to kind of advise me in the different decision point of me, but now a consumer. From a business point of view, of course, right? We are in the interchange or like in the section of the company cash flow, the revenue, but also the buying decision, like how we are making them, how we charge customers, how we build them, how we optimize their own payment internally, where we are going in your mind.
So it's very scary, to be honest. I think it's very scary. But you said like it will buy for me. I think the biggest trend we are already seeing is, there is so many talks about like bots and stuff, but it is going to be bots. But like it's a computer buying from a computer at the end of the day. It's going to be bots that are buying for you. Like a lot of things are not even going to go through websites anymore. Even now you go to ChatGPT, you say, I'm going to visit Rome. Like, what's your recommendation? I give a lot of details. I did that actually exercise yesterday. I got a few recommendations. I said, hey, but I have teenagers and obviously it needs to be near like Sephora and some other places that are super important for the visit in Rome. And I just got a list of hotels. And then the next question is like, would you like to book it? So if you book it now, you're not even like, you didn't do any search, you didn't go through websites, and they will work for you. It will already doing it today, but it's finding the best prices, it's finding what you want, and it's buying for you and making sure you get it to whatever is important for you, like the shipment, the time until you will get it, whatever. So
Yeah,
maybe the question is what will be our role, not what will happen to payment. Like,
I
what do you
think,
even do? You just say, I have like, it used to take me weeks to, like to prepare my, like, 3 weeks travel for the family. It used to take a very long time. You have to like book hotels and find and
right.
work and read and like buy books and sit and read. And like right now you literally can spend like very short time and the whole thing will be ready for you.
Yeah. I think our role, so eventually, like what I'm seeing when I use the tool, those tools actually get to know me a lot, right? I'm using it in my day-to-day. Everything that I'm working on, from really technical stuff to really kind of vision stuff to really brainstorming to the very simple stuff of even preparing this podcast, right? They get to know me very in a level that at the company and what we are doing and how we are thinking about stuff in a kind of very deep level. So for me, their ability to kind of understand the needs and kind of where we are and more and more kind of trained on what we are doing, how we are thinking about stuff, the preference can really leverage it to, you know what, you already know me. And in a year time or 3 year time, you will know me probably the best, like more than my wife or my co-founder. So just do it. Just go find me the tool, buy it, ship it,
Yeah, it
try to
actually
extract
asks
what
you
I
a
need.
question you didn't think about. It's like, but is that also important that it will be this and this and this? Like, yes, of course it's important. And if I would book the hotel myself, I wouldn't think about maybe that aspect, for example. But now it just asks me all these things, like what I'm like, and do I want to make sure that you also need this and this and this and this? And I don't know, like, I think that like the way all of our life is changing right now because of it is probably maybe at the point more than in the past that I would say it's also almost impossible to know like where we will be in a few years. I mean, there was always like our parents used to say when we were kids, like we didn't have like whatever TV in the house, but okay, or we didn't have internet. But right now it just seems like everything we are doing, we are starting to do it in a different way than we used to. I'm looking at my girls and I'm thinking like, is it even relevant what they learn in school? Like,
I'm
is
asking
it
myself as well.
is it
Yeah.
really relevant? Like, what are they learning there? What do they need to know? Like, and they are telling me, why do you know this? Like, if we want to know, we go ask ChatGPT, we get it. Like, why do we need to like know this? Why do we need to understand it? So I'm thinking a lot about like, what's our role? What do we really need to, you know, like to do? But I think one thing will not change if I think about like back to e-commerce and payment and all of that. Like at the end of the day, there is a consumer. There is you. Like maybe you didn't go into the website. Maybe you just talk to ChatGPT or to whatever you talk to your like assistant that is doing all the like buying things for you. There is a consumer at the end of the, like in one side, there is a consumer and the consumer expects to get good experience and they expect to, like, they want to do something. And if you make it difficult, if it's not the way they expect, they will not buy from you. And even their bot will not buy from you if this is like more difficult, if you get a decline and then they can't like complete the purchase. So I think the understanding of the identities, like, is the person really legit? Is he a good person that you want to give them good service, or is fraud? That will remain. It will just become harder to understand between the good and the bad, I would say, actors, because so like good bot or bad bot, like that's the, first question today. So is it a good actor or a bad actor? And if it's a bad actor, how do you make sure that they are stopped from any window that is like around the checkout, like the whole flow? And if it's a good customer, how do you make sure that they get what they want, how they want it? They get it shipped to where they want it to be shipped. They pay with the card they wanted to pay, or with whatever other payment methods they expect you to support. Like all of that, for me, will not change. And I think the expectation of the consumers is just growing all the time.
Yeah.
Like they are not going to be like to forgive you for like a bad like they are not coming back if you make their life hard. And I think this will not change, because even if they have some whatever bot that is doing it for them, he would find a better experience, like even better than me. He will find a place where where the card is going through, where the shipment is fast, where they can return it if they don't like it. So
The
I
experience is
think,
better.
yeah, consumers continue to be the
I love
king,
it
in my
that you
opinion.
finish with the customer in mind, right? The consumer experience, the customer experience. It's kind of the core, like with all the complexity of the payment and fraud and AI and everything that is happening, still eventually what will be the consumer experience during this process. That's great.
Exactly.
Galit, so thanks a lot for joining me. It was really amazing to host you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sachi. I also really enjoyed it. I like to talk payment. So thank you so much for having me here today.
Great. Thanks a lot.